This is what happens when determined women get together.
We've been told that the men are going to be crossing the border somewhere along this fence, and the police have just gone by here.
ये बिल्कुल सच है कि फीमेल में मैं पहली हूँ अपनी फैमिली में जो पुलिस में आई हूँ।
मेरी जिंदगी तबाह हो गई है और किसी को कोई सजा नहीं हुई।
हम गैरतमंद हैं, वो घर से क्यों गई थी? मेरी बेटियां मैं खुद मारूंगा। क्यों घर से बाहर गई हैं गैर आदमी के साथ?
Ladies and the few gentlemen out there, I'm David Walmsley, the editor of the Globe and Mail, and it's an absolute privilege to be here for a few moments just to discuss the brave work of our own Canadian Pakistani Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy's work as a documentarian. Thanks for being here, Sharmeen.
Thank you.
2 Oscars, arguably the most successful Canadian director in non-fiction movies that we've ever produced. It's brave work, it's independent work, and it's because you believe you can make a change.
I've always thought that film is a very powerful medium. It allows people to have empathy, to see a reflection of themselves in the people that they're watching on screen. Because, you know, the world is too much of us and them. And I feel that film really allows people to walk in other people's shoes. I've seen it in my own work. I've seen the impact that it's had, not only on the communities that I've shed a light on, but also the way it's forced people to move legislation. And really, for me, I'm a filmmaker because I'm an activist. And I make films because I want to get people angry about issues, and I want to push the needle. I want to push the needle, and I want to make people deeply uncomfortable about who they are and why they allow this to happen on their watch.
So before we get into the conversation around this, I just wanted to do a show of hands. How many of you have been to Pakistan?
Oh, not
More
bad.
than I would have thought, I think. So there's still some explaining to do, but there's exposure, there's an awareness. In the clip that we just saw there, which was with your most recent Academy Award for A Girl in the River, you show a father defending his actions after attempting to kill his daughter in what I think is that horrible phrase, the attempt of an honor killing. It's murder or attempted murder. But you were explaining to me that there is something more to it in Pakistan with respect to the notion of forgiving. Can you just pull on that a little?
So when I made A Girl in the River, the law in Pakistan was such that if a father killed his daughter or if a brother killed a sister, other family members could forgive them. And for years, activists had been working on closing that loophole. And I think A Girl in the River acted as a lightning rod. I was very fortunate that when the film came out, which was the story of a very brave 17-year-old Saba, who fell in love, decided to get married, and her father just couldn't handle that and decided to kill her. But she survived. He shot her, put her in a gunny bag, and threw her in the river. But miraculously, she found her way to a fuel station where they call the rescue services, and that's the beauty of that part of Pakistan. So when you think of Pakistan, you think of the things that don't work. Just imagine this young girl gets shot. She gets picked up. She goes to a local hospital. The doctor and the head doctor over there are self-proclaimed feminists. They say they're going to save her life. She finds a good lawyer who fights her case. So while there are so many horrible men, there are all of these other men who champion women's rights. And so when the film came out, the prime minister of the country, who had never seen a documentary before, decided to have a screening of the film at the prime minister's secretariat. And we used that opportunity, and of course the opportunity of being at the Oscars, to push for this legislation that had been stalled to go through. And so when the film aired and the Academy Award was won, he kept his promise, and the loophole in the law was closed, so you can no longer forgive in cases of honor killings in Pakistan.
I think my life's work would be complete if I'd achieved that alone. But you don't stop.
Hey, I'm not 40 yet, so I've got a long way to go.
We're going to show a few stills behind us of one of the great ambitious efforts of Sharmeen on mobile cinema. The idea that when a film is completed is when the work really begins. Can you walk us through a little bit around the work that you've done on the mobile cinema? You're taking the story, I mean, the fact the Prime Minister had never seen a documentary, you're now going into communities at nightfall and bringing people together.
So you make films, but who do you make films for? You make films to educate people. But when a vast majority of the people don't have access to television or to cinema screens, you have to bring your work to them. So I built Pakistan's first mobile cinema that goes from community to community, educating people through film about their rights, women teaching them about how they can file for divorce or how they can file for a police report, or children about their rights about child labor, about child abuse, or just action-packed fun films that have some sort of social messaging. And you know, it's not always easy. In one of the communities that the mobile cinema recently went to, they had not seen any entertainment for years. It was a town that had been hit by violence, by suicide bombings, by terrorism. And when the mobile cinema arrived there, the elders in the community were so overjoyed that there would be an opportunity for their children to learn something. And that's the greatest joy of being a filmmaker. It's not simply about making films, and it's great to meet George Clooney and to win more Oscars. No, don't get me wrong, and to win more Oscars than Leonardo DiCaprio. But it's about taking these films to these people. And you know, the mobile cinema is set up in such a way that it comes on at night, and you know, communities sit around. But Pakistan's also a country where women are seldom allowed in these areas to go out at night. So we have built a mobile cinema within a mobile cinema. It opens up inside, and then there are seats for women. So women can watch inside. About 15 women at a time can watch inside. So we're able to show women a lot of things that the men outside don't get to watch, which is also a great way to bring your messaging out to the people.
So are these are trucks, and you're driving them
Yeah.
through the hillsides?
Absolutely. It's a truck manned by some really amazing young men who basically drive from community to community. They park at night, and then the entire community comes out and watches the films.
So the men must also be struck by the ability, finally, for some attention to be paid to them beyond violence, and you offering up, for want of a better word, cultural outreach.
Absolutely.
What's their response?
You know, you have to take things to people. You know, all of us in this room, we think a certain way, we believe a certain way because we have been exposed to competing ideologies. We've been exposed to education, and we've had an upbringing which has allowed us the good fortune of exposure. But in these communities, these people are seldom exposed to anything other than what they're told, you know, by their school teacher or by the community elders. And I think that many a times they have a certain way of thinking because they've never been told otherwise. And these films, they open up their minds to in some way to so many different things that they've never seen or heard. You know, having a powerful woman in a film that shatters the stereotype of what a woman's role should be. Those are the kind of things that I feel that the mobile cinema is able to do in these communities.
But surely not everyone's happy to hear that message. You must meet resistance.
Oh, yeah, I mean, you know, depending on who you speak to at any given time, I'm either a villain or a hero. So, you know, it really does depend. And of course there is going to be resistance. Where there's change, especially change led by a woman, there is bound to be resistance. And, you know, but I take the resistance as it's fine. you know, the most important thing that I learned in my life was probably a lesson that I had when I was 10 years old, was that I am who I am because it's a luck of a draw. There was a coin toss somewhere, and I ended up being born on this side of the track. I could have easily been born on that side of the track. And that's why I feel like it is my moral obligation and my duty to push for all of those people who didn't have the same opportunity that I had. And so, yes, I wake up some mornings where I find there's a lot of hate against me, and there are threats and death threats and a lot of other things. Well, but I know that I'm being successful. I know that I'm pushing the right envelope and the right kind of buttons, because if I wasn't, then that kind of hate wouldn't happen. Then I wouldn't be making that kind of change. Exactly. So with progress, there is bound to be backlash.
Okay. I want to throw to a clip of a woman who started a group in her community to advocate specifically for women's rights. I wonder if we could play the clip here of Tabassum Adnan.
किसी भी औरत को अगर उसकी मनचाही ज़िंदगी नहीं मिलती या फिर उसके साथ जुल्म ज़्यादती होती है, चाहे वो बात ही क्यों ना तल्ख हो, तो मैं उसे डोमेस्टिक वायलेंस ही कंसिडर करती हूँ। तो ओवरऑल बचपन तो मैंने देखा ही नहीं है, क्योंकि मैं 13 साल की उम्र से ही शादीशुदा ज़िंदगी में धकेली गई थी। खुला का फ़ैसला मेरी ज़िंदगी का तल्ख तरीन फ़ैसला था, क्योंकि इसमें मेरे पेरेंट्स मुझसे रूठ गए थे, मेरे भाई बहनों ने मुझसे बात करना छोड़ दी थी। मेरी बात कोई नहीं सुन रहा, क्यों? मैं भी तो तकलीफ़ में हूँ, मुझे भी तो सहना पड़ रहा है। अल्लाह ने हिम्मत दी बस कि मुझे खड़ा होना है अपने लिए आवाज़ उठानी है। बाज़ दफ़े ये होता है कि हमारी भी कुछ गलतियाँ होती हैं, हम वक्त पे अपनी आवाज़ उठाती नहीं हैं, हम बात करती ही नहीं हैं। अचानक से मेरे जहन में ख्याल आया कि कम से कम, तब मैंने उसे जिरगे का नाम नहीं दिया था, हमने बस एक ग्रुप बनाया था कि इसमें हम अपने मसाइल डिस्कस करेंगे और हल निकालने की कोशिश करेंगे। और बाज़ दफ़ा तो औरतों ने भी काफ़ी मजाक उड़ाया कि ये क्या हमारा फ़ैसला करेंगी और ये हमारे लिए क्या कर सकती हैं, जो आज तक मर्द नहीं कर पाए वो औरत कैसे कर सकती है। मेरी एक अदना सी कोशिश है, शायद मैं बारिश का वो पहला कतरा बनी हूँ या बनना चाहती हूँ कि जो उठे और जो बाकी के कतरों से भी कहे कि बरसो, कुछ नहीं है, हम बरसेंगे, हम मिलके बरसेंगे तो एक दरिया बन सकेंगे।
I don't think I can quite fathom the bravery of that story, and following on from what you said about the toss of a coin and how someone has a life experience that is fantastic and somebody else struggles. She's obviously managed, though, to coalesce and bring together a group of like-minded women and to push against all of the societal pressures. What were the challenges that she faced? Are you still in touch with her? Tell us a little bit about it.
So this excerpt is from a film called Freedom Fighters, which is coming out soon. And Tabassum is this rare woman because she left her husband, and her husband didn't allow her to take the children with her. And so she just decided she'd had enough. And she left him, and she went to a meeting that was going on in her town about women's empowerment. And from there, she got this idea that why is justice always dispensed by men? Why can't women dispense justice for other women? And then she put this group of women together. But one of her biggest kind of challenge was to convince other women that they can and they have the ability to dispense justice, that they can own their own life, that they don't have to ask a man for something. And in 2014, there was a case that happened. She set up this women's jirga. And for those who don't know, it's an informal way of dispensing justice because the court system in Pakistan has a huge backlog of cases. So in order to have speedier justice, people set up these informal systems. They're always set up by men who dispense justice, and almost always it's against women. So her idea was very novel, but nobody was paying attention to her. The men were not paying attention, the women were not paying attention, and then a child was raped, and nobody took up that case. And she went forward and held protests and took on that case, and the police supported her, and eventually the men began to realize that this woman had a voice. And then more and more women started coming to her women jirga and asked began to ask her what legal help they should use, how they should deal with their husbands, what they should do with property disputes. And now her kind of camaraderie and the group that she's put together is very powerful. So it took a single woman's determination in a very remote part of the world where people only associate that with Malala and her getting shot, to take things in her hand and really change the lives of many women. And by the way, let me just tell you, there are many badass women like Tabassum everywhere in the world. And in these small villages and towns in Pakistan, so many women have realized that they have to speak up, they have to speak out, and they need to do things on their own. And they are. And I feel like I'm playing a small role in shedding a light on them, because today you know about Tabassum and tomorrow someone else will, and that'll inspire more young women to walk in her footsteps.
Fantastic. Now, Sharmeen, you have worked in many different countries. You don't just tell stories from Pakistan. You still live in Pakistan, but you're also interested in many other places. And your most recent venture is coming to HBO the beginning of next month.
Yes.
And this is a fascinating story looking in a similar way to the principle of how journalism and documentaries can actually perhaps move societal thinking. You've taken on the NCAA, the college system of sports in the United States. So I'm wondering if we could run a clip. Student athlete.
This is where I scored my first touchdown and made my first college football catch.
Field looking to throw on second and goal. Has his man, has a touchdown. Shamar Green.
I worked with the grounds crew when I was in college. One of the rare jobs we was allowed to have. We didn't do nothing but pick up like trash after the games and stuff like that. It's crazy because you send young kids on a roller coaster. You recruit them, you bring them in. As soon as we sign, you switch up and you're here for a job. Okay, cool, that's fine. That's fine, I do that. But then you don't pay me. Really? If it's a business, if it's a job, you should pay them. Don't come in here and tell me that this is a brotherhood. This is a fraternity. It's not. It's a business.
Yeah, who doesn't want to take on a $6 billion industry?
Yeah, well, talking of which, if you didn't think that Sharmeen was a powerhouse till now, when you realize that LeBron James is just one of the producers on this, this film, it really brings you to questions of what is going on in the athletic system through the colleges in the States. Give us your reflection of what you discovered and what is even this week playing out in the headlines around the idea of proper funding for student athletes.
So the film looks at the revenue generation sports in the NCAA, which is basketball and football predominantly. For those of you who follow March Madness, $1 billion was just spent on television rights of March Madness. You should know that players are told, the big promise is that you're going to get this college degree, and in return for this free college degree, you're going to play sports for us. That's the dream. But you never get to go to class. Someone else sort of passes through you because you're always playing, you're always traveling. It's a high-pressure sports game. You get injured, you get spat out of the system. The film basically looks at the big dream, the all-American dream that is promised to all of these predominantly African-American students, because, hang on and listen to this statistic, only 3% of colleges have African Americans as students, but 56% of all football NCAA and 60% of all basketball in the NCAA is of African Americans that play. So you can just tell that these are poor students that come from inner city, and they're promised all of these dreams. Shamar, who you saw, graduated from Rutgers University with a degree in journalism. He barely makes $1,500 a month. He is homeless, lives in his car. He was a star at Rutgers. He didn't make it to the NFL because of an injury. These are the stories that you don't hear They're beyond the headlines. And that's the story we wanted to tell. It's a story of human rights. It's a story of slave labor. It's a story of how young men are being exploited.
And what do you... And in 30 seconds, how do you fix that? There is litigation that's ongoing.
Yes, so right now, Jeffrey Kessler has an antitrust case that is going on that is fighting for the right of all of these athletes to receive money.
And so that wouldn't be salaries, that could be prize money, it could be anything. It would just give them
look, if Nike wants to pay you $1 million to wear their gear, then so be it. Because anyways, the coaches make millions and millions of dollars. Coaches in the NCAA are paid $5, $7, $9 million, okay? And the students are paid nothing. You know what they end up with? Sweatsuit and many, many shoes.
Okay, we're running out of time, so I've just got a chance to ask one more question. And I'm fascinated as we all try and bring the stories to the audience in a different way. Virtual reality has been looked at in many Western countries as almost a distraction, and it's too busy, it's too much, there's enough other ways to learn. But in the work that you've done, and perhaps there's a few stills we can show, you've managed to engage the kids when it comes to virtual reality in Pakistan and tell the story and bring it alive. Can you just tell us a little bit about that?
So virtual reality allows you to be in a place and experience something that you haven't experienced before. In Pakistan, I finished a series of 5 films that show different people working on different issues. One of those films is about women who are part of the anti-terrorism squad in Pakistan. And literally, these are the baddest asses women I've ever seen. They repel from buildings, they defuse bombs, they defy every stereotype you've ever had of a Pakistani woman, and they shatter that by a mile. And so we took these films into schools, predominantly boys' schools, and asked them the simple question about, should women be allowed to work? Would you allow your mother, your sister, your wife to work? And these are conservative schools and low-income schools, and almost always the response was, you know, it's better if women stay at home. And so we decided, well, why don't we just shatter your stereotype about what a woman can do? And so we bought all of these virtual reality headsets, and we put them on these boys, and they're watching these women repelling and running and kind of firing RPGs and getting trained, and then they literally put it down, and there's like silence. And they're looking around, and then you ask them the question that should women work, and they're like, yes. And like, did you imagine that women can do that? And they're like, I'd never imagined that. I mean, that's amazing. I wouldn't mind if my sister did that. And then so you show by example. You know, you open up minds by showing by example. You open up minds by showing them the potential, the possibility of what women can do. And so that's what we've been doing with virtual reality.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're out of time. Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy. Thank you very much.